A raised auction paddle can topple an empire just as easily as a bullet. In rooms where power wears tuxedos and betrayal smells like expensive cologne, violence rarely kicks down the door. It waits for the right moment to be invited in. If you don't understand why a man enters a room, you're already part of the plan. On a quiet Thursday night in a private Manhattan gallery, disguised as a collector's auction, millions of dollars in gold artifacts and antique medallions gleamed beneath museum lights. Politicians sipped champagne. Investors studied glass cases. Security stood like sculptures. At the center table sat Adam Watkins, silver-haired, immovable, a man who had outlived rivals and indictments alike. And then the wrong man walked in. He wasn't loud. He wasn't armed in any obvious way. He didn't carry a bidding paddle. He didn't look at the artifacts. He looked at Adam. The tension didn't rise in the room. It narrowed. Most people didn't notice. One woman did. The only thing standing between a quiet assassination and a room full of influential witnesses was a waitress adjusting a wine glass with steady hands. This is the story of how a woman who refused to panic caught the attention of a mafia boss who noticed everything. The air inside the gallery usually carried the scent of polished wood and aged velvet. Tonight, beneath the crystal chandeliers and portraits of long-dead aristocrats, it carried something else. Expectation. Before we dive into the story, let me ask you something. We're on a journey to 1,000 subscribers, and every single person here matters. If you're enjoying these stories, please subscribe and be part of this community. And I'd love to know, leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. It means more than you can imagine. Now, let's get back to the story. It was 8:42 p.m. The final auction item, a rare gold medallion once belonging to a founding crime family, sat in a glass case beneath white light. Doris Bernardo smoothed the front of her black uniform, the red sash at her waist tied neatly. Her hair was secured in a tight bun. Her heels were silent against marble floors. She had been invisible all night, refilling glasses, clearing plates, moving through power without disturbing it. 27 years old, balancing her mother's hospital bills, working double shifts, studying people the way other women studied menus. She noticed who avoided eye contact, who didn't drink, who stood too still. And when the man with cold eyes and patient hands entered the gallery, she noticed something else. He wasn't here to bid. He was here to decide who would leave. Doris did not panic. She reached for Adam Watkins' wine glass and quietly changed it. Across the room, Adam's eyes shifted. Not toward the hitman, toward her. And in that moment, the balance of the evening tilted. This is where the story truly begins. The ambient hum of the restaurant settled around Adam like a thick fog, muffling the world outside. The clinking of glasses and low murmur of conversations faded into a backdrop as he focused on the man approaching his table. The hitman moved with an unsettling calm, his presence a stark contrast to the carefully curated elegance of the establishment. As the man drew closer, Adam's security team instinctively shifted, their muscles tensing in response to the unfamiliar threat. But Adam, with a subtle wave of his hand, signaled them to ease. He was well acquainted with this game. He understood the power dynamics at play. The hitman, a tall figure dressed in a tailored suit that concealed a body honed for lethal efficiency, smiled as he reached Adam's side. Without waiting for an invitation, he slid into the chair opposite Adam, the fabric of his suit whispering against the chair's leather. His voice was soft, almost conspiratorial, as he leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Watkins, I trust you're enjoying your evening?" Adam met the hitman's gaze, his expression neutral. "It's fine, thank you. I prefer my evenings without interruptions, though." The hitman chuckled, but there was no warmth in his laughter. But interruptions are the very essence of our lives, aren't they? They lead us down paths we never anticipated." His words dripped with a veneer of civility, each syllable carefully chosen, masking the underlying tension that crackled between them. Adam felt the air thicken, the conversation veering into treacherous territory. They were not discussing the weather or the latest stock trends. No, this was a dance of veiled threats and unspoken intentions, each man gauging the other's resolve. The hitman continued, his tone unyielding. One must always be prepared for the unexpected. Doris, the waitress with an unassuming demeanor, approached the table just then, her presence a welcome distraction. She carried a glass of water, her movements fluid and practiced. As she placed the glass in front of Adam, he caught a glimpse of her folded napkin, a diagonal crease that shouldn't have been there. It was a signal, one he recognized instantly. The hitman's gaze locked onto Doris as she stepped back, his eyes narrowing slightly. He was testing her, probing for any sign of fear or hesitation. But Doris held her ground, her expression unwavering. There was strength in her posture, a quiet defiance that sent a ripple of surprise through Adam. She had seen the threat, understood the unspoken code of the moment. Instead of retreating or faltering, she had sent a message back, external threat acknowledged. Adam felt a shift within himself, a sudden urgency to reassess the dynamics at play. His focus shifted from the hitman to Doris, who had inadvertently become the center of this tense moment. The hitman, once the focal point of Adam's attention, now receded into the background. Adam studied Doris, noting the way her hands remained steady, how her breath appeared measured, as if she were ready for whatever might come next. The unexpected fortitude she displayed shifted the power dynamic. She was no longer a mere bystander in this dangerous exchange. "Interesting choice of napkin placement, Doris," Adam remarked, his voice low enough that only she could hear. He wanted her to understand how much he appreciated her silent warning, how it had transformed his understanding of the situation. The hitman, still seated across from Adam, seemed to sense the change in the atmosphere. He leaned back, a flicker of intrigue crossing his face. "You see, Mr. Watkins, transitions are inevitable. We are often thrust into roles we never anticipated." There was a finality to his words, a clarity that suggested he was speaking of more than just napkins and tables. Adam held the hitman's gaze, recognizing the underlying truth. The man before him was not just a threat, he was a harbinger of change, a catalyst for the upheaval that was about to unfold. The subtle tension in the air spoke volumes, and Adam felt the weight of the moment settle heavily upon him. As the hitman continued, his words hung between them like a taut wire. "It's how we adapt that defines our survival." In that moment, Adam understood. This was not just a meeting, it was a reckoning. The stakes had risen, the game changed. Yet, as he studied Doris, he realized that he was no longer alone in this fight. He had an ally, one who didn't flinch in the face of danger. And as the conversation drifted toward a close, Adam felt a renewed sense of determination. He was ready to navigate this treacherous landscape, armed not just with his own resolve, but with the strength of those who stood beside him. "Transitions are inevitable, Mr. Watkins," the hitman repeated, a knowing smile playing at the corners of his lips. In that moment, Adam was ready to embrace whatever came next. Doris adjusted her position in the shadows, the dim light casting elongated silhouettes across the room. The air was thick with tension, a palpable buzz that signaled the arrival of chaos. Around her, the usual clamor of the gathering faded into a distant hum as she focused on the man at the far end of the room. Everyone assumed he was there for one purpose, to eliminate Adam. But Doris's instincts told her something was off. The hitman stood with an air of quiet confidence, his eyes scanning the crowd with a deliberate precision. Yet, every few moments, his gaze flickered toward Marcus, Adam's right-hand man. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye, but Doris wasn't untrained. She had seen the signs of impending danger too many times to ignore them now. As she shifted slightly, her attention sharpened when she caught a whisper, a quiet urgency carried through the din of the party. After tonight, he won't see the morning. The words wrapped around her, tightening like a noose. The tone was unmistakable, laced with a certainty that sent chills racing down her spine. It was clear now that this wasn't about Adam at all. Doris's mind raced. The implications were monumental. If the hitman intended to eliminate Marcus, the fallout would be catastrophic for Adam. Framing him for internal instability would throw the entire organization into disarray, paving the way for a hostile takeover. The pieces fell into place like a jigsaw puzzle, revealing a sinister plan: public chaos, market destabilization, and all eyes turning to the federal authorities. It was more than a hit, it was a calculated restructuring of power. Her heart pounded in her chest. Adam had always trusted Marcus, relied on him to keep everything in order. But what if this trust was misplaced? What if Marcus had been playing a game far more dangerous than anyone realized? Doris felt the weight of the revelation settle heavily on her shoulders. She had to act, and she had to act fast. For a moment, she contemplated her next move, weighing the risks against the urgency of the situation. Would anyone believe her if she confronted Marcus? The implications of her intervention could spiral out of control. But the alternative, standing idly by while the hitman executed his plan, was unthinkable. Doris took a deep breath, steeling herself for what she had to do. She stepped out of the shadows, her eyes locking onto the hitman just as he leaned closer to Marcus, their conversation becoming more intimate, more conspiratorial. The two men were a stark contrast. One exuded a cold, calculated menace, while the other radiated a false sense of security, but both were dangerous. "Marcus," she called, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. The two men turned toward her, expressions shifting from surprise to something darker. "We need to talk." The hitman's eyes narrowed, assessing her presence with a predatory gaze. He seemed to gauge the threat she posed, a flicker of annoyance crossing his features. Marcus recovered quickly, his charm reasserting itself as he flashed a disarming smile. "Doris, this isn't a good time. We were just discussing a few private matters." Doris squared her shoulders, refusing to back down. "I think it's a perfect time. There are things happening tonight that you both need to address immediately." Marcus's demeanor shifted, a shadow crossing his face. "This isn't about you. Stay out of it." "Stay out of it," she echoed, incredulity lacing her tone. "You're talking about a man who's here to kill you, Marcus. You need to listen." The hitman's gaze flickered, a flash of irritation mingling with curiosity. He stepped back slightly, allowing Marcus to take the forefront. "What are you talking about?" Marcus asked, a hint of disbelief creeping into his voice. Doris took a step closer, eyes locked onto Marcus's. "You're the target. He's not here for Adam. He's here for you. You need to get out of here. Now." For a moment, silence enveloped them. The room buzzed around them, but in this pocket of confrontation, time stood still. Marcus's expression shifted from skepticism to alarm, and Doris could see the gears turning in his mind, the realization dawning upon him. "Doris, you can't be serious," he finally said, his voice dropping an octave. "I am dead serious," she replied, her tone firm. "They're setting you up to take the fall. You need to trust me." She could see the conflict in his eyes, the flicker of doubt battling with the instinct for self-preservation. The hitman remained silent, a watchful predator waiting for the opportune moment to strike. Doris knew she had to keep Marcus focused on her, to pull him away from the danger that lurked just behind him. "Think about it, Marcus. Why would a hitman be so interested in you unless there's a bigger game at play?" she pressed, urgency threading her words. "We can't let this happen." As the tension thickened, every second felt like an eternity. Doris was acutely aware of the stakes, the lives hanging in the balance. The clock was ticking, and there was no time to lose. She had pulled the thread, and now it was up to Marcus to unravel the truth before it was too late. The atmosphere in the lavish banquet room hummed with anticipation, the kind of tension that hung thick in the air just before a storm. The soft clinking of glasses and the muted conversations of influential guests blended into a symphony of superficiality. But amidst the glamour, Doris felt a current of danger swirling, a dark undercurrent that threatened to disrupt the facade. She moved closer to Adam, feigning a need to adjust the table placement. Leaning down, she whispered, her voice low but urgent, "The wolf isn't hunting you. He's hunting your shadow." Adam froze, the warmth of the moment slipping away as the weight of her words sank in. The revelation struck him like a bolt of lightning, illuminating the hidden dangers lurking in the corners of their world. Marcus was the target, and the implications were staggering. Someone was orchestrating a plan to isolate Adam, to remove his closest ally and leave him vulnerable. His mind raced, processing the ramifications of her insight. He tested her, his voice barely above a whisper. "How do you know?" Doris straightened, her eyes never leaving his. "Because he never once looked at you as prey." In that moment, a shift occurred. The power dynamics of the room transformed. Adam realized that Doris was not just a bystander. She was a strategist, someone who understood the nuances of human behavior and the hidden motives that danced beneath the surface. The implications of her perception were profound. He had always seen her as a capable ally, but now he recognized her as a formidable player in this high-stakes game. As he absorbed her words, the hitman across the room received a text. The screen lit up with a message that sent a ripple of urgency through him. Time was accelerating, and the plan was unfolding faster than anticipated. He cast a quick glance at Adam and Doris, his expression unreadable but charged with intent. Doris could sense the shift in the atmosphere, the tension tightening as the stakes rose. She knew that they had only moments before the situation escalated beyond their control. "We need to act quickly," she whispered, her urgency palpable. "If Marcus is the target, we must warn him before it's too late." Adam nodded, the gears in his mind turning rapidly. He was grateful for Doris's insight, but now he faced a dilemma. How could he protect Marcus without revealing their knowledge of the impending threat? The last thing he needed was for Marcus to panic or, worse, to feel betrayed. With a calculated calmness, Adam leaned back slightly, his hand discreetly reaching under the table. The noise of the party concealed his movements, but he knew he had to communicate without drawing attention. He made a quiet call, his voice steady as he dialed Marcus's private line. "Marcus," he said softly when his friend answered. "Listen to me carefully. You're in danger. I need you to leave the party immediately and go somewhere safe." There was a moment of silence on the other end, and Adam could almost hear Marcus's mind racing, processing the unexpected urgency. "What are you talking about?" Marcus finally asked, skepticism lacing his tone. "It's not Adam who's being targeted," Doris interjected, her voice low enough to remain concealed. "It's you. The hitman is here for you. Please, just trust us and get out." Marcus hesitated, the weight of their words settling in. "How do you know this?" "Just trust me," Adam insisted, his voice firm. "We don't have time to explain. You're being set up, and you need to protect yourself." The tension in the room escalated, and as Marcus absorbed their warning, Adam could feel the eyes of the hitman shifting toward them, a predatory instinct igniting within him. "Okay." Marcus finally relented, the urgency evident in his voice. "I'll leave now." Adam ended the call, the decision made, yet the danger was far from over. He could feel the hitman's gaze still lingering, calculating and poised to strike. "Now we need to create a distraction," Doris murmured, her eyes scanning the room, assessing the guests and their movements. "If we can divert attention away from Marcus, it might give him the chance he needs." Adam nodded, a plan forming in his mind. The power shift had invigorated him. He and Doris were no longer mere bystanders in this unfolding drama. They were active participants, and it was time to take control of the narrative. As the hitman moved closer, their eyes locked for a moment, and Adam understood the stakes. The wolf was on the prowl, and it was up to them to ensure that the shadow didn't vanish into the night. The game had changed, and now it was time to play. The atmosphere in the banquet room shifted abruptly, a palpable tension crackling through the air as the hitman made his move. Rather than drawing a weapon, he triggered a fire alarm, the shrill sound slicing through the murmur of conversations like a knife. The lights flickered ominously, plunging sections of the room into sudden darkness, the chaos unfolding with a precision that was both alarming and calculated. In the midst of the confusion, Marcus was maneuvered toward an exit corridor, his instincts kicking in but unable to fully grasp the danger lurking just beyond the chaos. The crowd began to stir, a mixture of panic and curiosity sweeping through the guests as they turned to face the closest exit. Doris's heart raced as she observed the unfolding scenario. This was no mere coincidence. It was a trap designed to isolate Marcus. Doris acted instinctively, her mind racing as she calculated the best way to disrupt the hitman's plan. Without hesitating, she reached for the gallery curtains, pulling them down prematurely. The fabric cascaded toward the ground, plunging part of the room into shadow, effectively disrupting the line of sight for anyone trying to pinpoint Marcus's location. The darkness cloaked her movements, providing a brief moment of cover in the escalating chaos. As guests began to file toward the exits, security personnel scrambled to regain formation, their shouts and commands mingling with the alarm's blaring sirens. Doris could hear the frantic radio chatter as they attempted to assess the situation. The hitman, however, was no longer in control of the narrative. He had miscalculated, and now the disruption created by Doris had thrown a wrench into his plans. The hitman's eyes scanned the room, searching for the source of the interference. When he locked eyes with Doris, a chill ran down her spine. She was now visible in the shadows, a figure who had stepped outside the periphery of the chaos. The moment stretched between them like a taut wire, the tension electric. He recognized her, and in that instant, it was clear that she was not just a bystander. She was a player in this deadly game. Adam, standing a few paces away, observed the exchange with growing alarm. He could see the determination in Doris's stance and the resolve etched into her features. She had taken a stand, disrupting the hitman's carefully orchestrated plan, but the danger had only intensified. The fire alarm wailed on, a cacophony of sound that masked the real threat lurking among them. Doris felt the weight of the hitman's gaze, a predator assessing its prey. She had put herself in the line of fire, and now there was no turning back. In the midst of the chaos, she had become the focal point of his attention, and she needed to keep him from realizing the true threat that Marcus posed. The hitman's expression hardened, a flicker of annoyance crossing his features as he recognized that someone had interfered with his plans. He began to move toward her, the shadows concealing his intentions, but not the menace that radiated from him. Doris's mind raced as she considered her next move. She needed to buy Marcus time, to ensure he escaped the trap set for him. "Adam," she called out, her voice cutting through the din, "we need to get Marcus out of here now." Adam nodded, understanding the urgency in her tone. He had been watching the hitman closely, and now he recognized that the man was no longer focused solely on Marcus. The danger was shifting, and if Doris could keep the hitman occupied, it might provide the distraction they needed. With a swift motion, Adam stepped into the fray, weaving through the crowd toward Marcus's last known position. He could see Marcus near the exit corridor, confusion and concern etched across his face. The air was thick with smoke from the alarm, and he had to act quickly. Meanwhile, Doris maintained her composure, her eyes never leaving the hitman. You think you can just walk in here and take what you want? She challenged, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. The hitman smirked, a chilling expression that sent a shiver down her spine. You just made yourself memorable, he whispered, a promise of retribution laced within his words. Without breaking eye contact, he began to retreat, blending into the chaos of the crowd. In that moment, time seemed to slow as Doris registered the implications of his statement. He was not just leaving, he was signaling that this was not over, that the game had only just begun. Adam reached Marcus just as the hitman faded into the shadows, his intentions still cloaked in mystery. We need to go now, Adam urged, urgency propelling his words as he grasped Marcus's arm, pulling him away from the exit. As they moved toward the back of the room, the fire alarm continued to blare, creating a whirlwind of confusion that masked their escape. They slipped into the shadows, the room behind them a chaotic tableau of noise and fear. Doris exhaled slowly, her heart still racing as she processed the hitman's parting words. The battle lines had been drawn, and they were now firmly entrenched in a deadly game where every move mattered. The night was far from over, and the whispers of danger were only just beginning to echo through their lives. The grand dining room, once alive with laughter and clinking glasses, now lay silent, save for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Shadows danced across the walls, flickering beneath the dimmed lights as Adam gestured for Doris to join him at his table. The weight of the evening's events hung heavily in the air, and he sensed a shared understanding between them, a moment that could redefine their futures. As Doris settled into the plush chair across from him, Adam leaned forward, his expression grave. Marcus had been negotiating his own leadership transition, he revealed, his voice low and steady. The hitman was hired by rival investors. The words struck Doris like a cold gust of wind, the full implications swirling in her mind. Marcus had always been ambitious, but this was a level of treachery she hadn't expected. I was watching him, Adam continued, his brow furrowing. But I didn't know tonight was execution night. His admission hung in the air, a confession laden with regret. He had always prided himself on being a step ahead, yet this time, he felt the sting of betrayal. Doris's mind raced, considering the implications of Adam's revelation. You're saying he was taken out because of a power play? She asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. What about the fallout? Thanks to you, there won't be one, Adam replied, his gaze piercing into hers. You prevented a public scandal, an internal fracture, a power vacuum. He paused, his tone shifting as he studied her. But I have to ask, why didn't you panic? Doris met his gaze, her resolve unwavering. My grandfather once worked security for you, Adam. I grew up hearing his stories about how coups happen silently, how power shifts in the shadows without anyone even realizing it until it's too late. She leaned back slightly, recalling the countless evenings spent listening to his warnings, the lessons embedded in her mind like a mantra. Adam's expression darkened, the mention of her grandfather bringing back uncomfortable memories. He was a good man, he said, a hint of sorrow in his voice. But he disappeared after the last round of internal restructuring. The words hung between them, a shared acknowledgement of a past marked by loyalty and loss. The tension in the room grew palpable as both of them reflected on the implications of that disappearance. Doris could see the flicker of recognition in Adam's eyes, a realization that the past had a way of creeping back into the present. It was a dangerous game they were playing, one that demanded vigilance and cunning. I remember the incident, Adam said finally, breaking the silence. It was a chaotic time, but it didn't sit right with me. We lost good people. He leaned back in his chair, studying her closely. You've clearly learned from your grandfather's experiences. I admire your poise. Doris felt a rush of gratitude mingled with apprehension. Thank you, she replied, her tone measured. But it's not just admiration that I seek. It's a position where I can make a difference. I want to ensure that history doesn't repeat itself. Adam's interest piqued. What are you suggesting? I'd like to offer my skills as an observer at future private meetings, she proposed, her voice steady. Not as a waitress, but as an asset. I need to be involved, to understand the dynamics before I can truly act. He regarded her with a mixture of surprise and respect. You're serious, he noted, a hint of a smile creeping onto his lips. You think you can navigate this treacherous landscape? I know I can, she replied, her confidence unwavering. But there are conditions. Adam leaned forward, intrigued. What kind of conditions? Doris took a breath, carefully choosing her words. I need transparency. No secrets. If I'm to be your asset, I must understand the full landscape, the players involved, and the stakes at hand. I won't be blindsided, not like Marcus was. Adam considered her words, the weight of her request settling over him. He had always valued honesty and loyalty, yet the world he operated in was fraught with deception. That's a tall order, he said, his tone serious. I know it is, she replied, unwavering. But I'm not asking for a guarantee. Just an understanding that we're in this together. If I'm to be your eyes and ears, I need to be trusted. A silence fell between them, the air thick with tension and possibility. Adam finally nodded, a look of respect in his eyes. All right, Doris. You have a deal. The air in the private meeting room was thick with tension as Adam prepared for the final power play. The table was elegantly set, a stark contrast to the gravity of the situation. Doris sat behind Adam, her heart racing, ready to observe the unfolding drama. Everything she had learned in the shadows, from her grandfather's tales to her recent experiences, led to this moment. When Marcus entered, he exuded an air of confidence, his posture straight and his eyes scanning the room. He was a man who had played the game of power well, but today the stakes were different. Adam gestured for him to take a seat, his expression unreadable. Thank you for coming, Marcus, Adam began, his tone calm. We need to address some concerns. Marcus leaned back, a smirk playing on his lips. Concerns? You mean unfounded accusations? I've done nothing wrong. You know that. His denial was immediate, a shield against the truth that lingered just beneath the surface. Doris listened intently, her mind racing as she took in every word. Then, she caught it, the phrase Marcus used, evolution requires sacrifice. It echoed in her mind, the same wording she had overheard from the hitman not long ago. The connection was undeniable, a chilling confirmation of his duplicity. Adam's gaze flickered toward Doris for a brief moment, a silent acknowledgement of their shared understanding. She could sense the shift in the atmosphere, the tension thickening as Adam's demeanor hardened. He subtly signaled to security, a preemptive move that would ensure the meeting's conclusion was seamless and quiet. Marcus, Adam said, his voice low and steady. You've been a liability. Your actions have consequences. Marcus's confidence faltered for the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his features. You can't be serious, he protested, but the weight of Adam's words hung heavily in the air. With a slight nod from Adam, security moved in, their presence a quiet but firm reminder of the inevitability of the situation. Marcus was removed from the room without a scene, no violence needed, just the finality of a decision made. The elegance of the act was striking, power disguised as refinement. As the door closed behind Marcus, Doris felt a rush of adrenaline. The air shifted, and a sense of relief flooded the room, mingling with the tension that had preceded it. Adam turned to her, a glimmer of respect in his eyes. He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a sleek black card, handing it to her with a measured grace. You didn't panic when death walked in, he observed, his voice laced with admiration. He studied her closely, as if weighing the depths of her character. Men fear bullets. I fear intelligence. Doris took the card, feeling its weight in her palm. It was more than just a card, it was a symbol of her new role in this intricate game of power. She understood then the significance of her journey, from invisible to observant, from an outsider to an indispensable part of Adam's strategy. The final scene shifted, transporting them to a future event, where Doris was now seated beside Adam. She was not serving but observing, actively participating in the dynamics that unfolded around her. The room was buzzing with conversation, phones rising in hands, capturing moments that would soon be shared with the world. But Doris was different now. She understood the language of silence, the power it wielded. As she glanced around the room, she noticed the subtle exchanges, the glances, the pauses, the unspoken agreements that often went unnoticed by those not attuned to the nuances of power. The invisible people, like her, had a way of seeing everything, of absorbing the atmosphere and reading the room with an acuity that was often overlooked. In that moment, Doris realized that she was no longer just an observer. She was a player in this high-stakes game. The themes of power disguised as elegance, silence as a weapon, and the importance of intelligence over brute force were no longer abstract concepts, they were her reality. As the evening progressed, Doris felt a sense of belonging that had once eluded her. She was positioned at the table, not merely an observer of history, but a part of its making. The legacy of her grandfather echoed in her mind, a reminder that in the world of power, those who understand the language of silence often wield the most influence. And with that understanding, she was ready to embrace her new role, poised to navigate the complexities of the future alongside Adam. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you loved this one, I have more videos just like it waiting for you on my channel. Click the video on your screen now and keep the story going. Enjoy!